He had his gun, so he just swung it open.
I start to notice that, the atmosphere feels a little bit weird.
First thing he seen was this 6.5 foot tall, broad shoulder, dark hair. That freaked him out.
We hadn't talked to her about like life and death and what any of that means. She's 3 years old,
So we turned around. Suddenly there's a whole tree falling across the road.
And she was describing to us that, there was a deceased person that she could see visually.
You're listening to Cryptid Clues, where we tackle the ever-expanding history and mystery of monsters and supernatural madness every Monday and Friday. You can find us at CryptidClues.ca for more information, or even check out exclusive content such as interviews and D&D campaigns at patreon.com/CryptidClues.
Welcome to Cryptid Clues, everybody. I'm your host, Reuben Olson, joined by your other also host, Taylor Field. Today's episode gets confuddled as we muddle the muddy monster. If you want to get cleaned off, however, head on over to CryptidClues.ca. Ask us questions over at our email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. And if you like what you hear, support us on Patreon for $1 or more for ad-free exclusive content, D&D episodes and more, patreon.com/CryptidClues. Finally, you can find us on almost all social media.
You said it. Brilliant. I love your intros so much. They never cease to amaze me.
I came up with that one on the spot, too.
Yeah, that was beautiful. So, out of curiosity, just to kind of start us off, have you had any pre-existing awareness of this cryptid?
No, but based on the mud monster name, it kind of makes me think of like video games where you get like a muddy like zombie like thing that rises out, just made of muck. The one Pokemon muck even.
Right. That's fair. That's very fair. What if I told you it was more affiliated with a Sasquatch?
Ooh, like a skunk ape kind of a thing where you go, ooh, that doesn't sound like a Bigfoot. And then you look at it and go, that's a Squatch.
Yeah, basically, exactly. So our episode today begins with a case file from June 26, 1973. Received by a radio dispatcher, the complaint was placed by a Mrs. Harry Ray in Westwood Lane. And I quote, "At approximately 10:12 p.m., the Murfreesboro Police Department received a phone call from Mrs. Harry Ray stating that her daughter and her daughter's boyfriend had just seen a large creature in the field behind their residence. Officers Nash and Manwaring were dispatched to the scene. Upon arrival, officers were met by Cheryl A. Ray and Randy E. Creeth, which gave the following account of what had occurred. Randy and Cheryl were sitting on the patio talking when they observed something moving around a patch of small trees in the field behind 37 Westwood Lane. Both Randy and Cheryl watched and observed a large creature walk out of the patch of trees near the edge of the yard and then turn around and walk back into the field. The creature was described as being 7 to 8 feet tall, weighing 300 to 500 pounds, pale dirty white or cream colored, standing on 2 feet. Creeth stated that he walked toward it and got approximately 30 to 40 feet from it. Creeth also stated that it had a musky odor to it. Officers inspected the area where the creature was seen and found. Weeds were broken down and somewhat of a path where something had walked through was discovered. Jerry Nellis was notified to bring his dog to the area to see if the dog would track the creature. Upon arrival of Nellis and his dog to the area to see if the dog would track this creature, his dog is, to let it be known, a German Shepherd trained to attack, search buildings, and
I know where
track.
this is going.
The dog was led to the area where the creature was last seen. The dog began tracking down the hill where the creature was reported to have gone. As the dog started down the hill, it kept stopping and sniffing at a slime substance on the weeds. The slime appeared periodically as the dog tracked the creature. Nellis put some of the slime between his fingers, rubbed it, and it left a black coloring on his fingers. each time the dog found amounts of it, the dog would hesitate. The creature was tracked down the hill to a pond, where around the pond was a wooded area. Heading to the south of the pond is where the dog attempted to pull Nellis down a steep embankment. The area where the dog tracked the creature, however, was too thick and bushy to walk through, so the dog was pulled off of the trail and returned to the car.
It's not where I thought that was going to go. I thought the dog was going to be too scared to investigate.
Oh, that might or may not be what happens shortly here. Officers then searched the entire area with flashlights. Officer Nash, Bellis, and the dog then proceeded to the area directly south of where the dog was pulled off from the tracks. The area was at the end of the first road to the west past Westwood Hills turnoff. The area is approximately half a mile south of the area of the pond behind 37 Westwood Lane. Nellis and the dog again began to search the area to see if the dog could again pick up the scent. Nellis and the dog approached an abandoned barn, and Nellis called to Officer Nash to come to the area as the dog would not enter the barn. Nellis pushed the dog inside, and the dog immediately ran out.
Oh, that poor pupper.
Mm-hmm. Nash and Nellis searched the barn and found nothing inside. Nellis stated that the dog was trained to search buildings and had never backed down from anything. Nellis could offer no explanation as why the dog became scared and would not go inside the barn. Officers continued to search the area, but were unable to locate the creature. Now, addition to this, Dave Barrell, neighbors of Ray's, stated that approximately 10 minutes prior to Creeth and Ray sighting the creature, his child came into the house and stated that there was a large ghost in their backyard. Barrell stated he thought nothing of it until Creeth and Cheryl sighted their creature.
Super interesting that the creature was like white, kind of, as that's quite uncommon for a lot of Bigfoot or Sasquatch reports. Very few that report it as white.
Yeah, that's definitely a curveball, I would say, because usually you're expecting a dark-haired, brown, maybe red or black, that kind of thing. But the very rare instances of white, you might think like, oh, maybe it's an older one.
And the slime too, like what's up with that?
That's exactly it. What is up with that? I wanted to kind of get your thoughts on as to what you think it is.
Well, I mean, if it's older and it's got white hairs, maybe it's drooling a whole lot. I just, if it was leaving like a blackish residue, that seems to be why it's called the mud monster. Perhaps it was going through the mud or whatever. Its hair is so white that it still was visible, but it like left some kind of residue that was like a little bit dirty and gross, almost like an oil. You rub an oil on your fingers and it's kind of like black and gritty, but you put it on like a surface or whatever and look at it pool up and it's just kind of clear and rainbow-like.
So how would you compare this to a skunk ape? Do you think that there's some big similarities going on here?
I suppose so. I mean, I think skunk ape is just another subspecies of a Sasquatch.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So moving on, I have another report here, yet again from Murfreesboro, sighting of unknown creature. Location, number 25, Westwood Lane. Date, June 19th, 1976. We're jumping 3 years ahead now. Approximately 9:59 p.m., and I quote, "A Mrs. Ray Kells called Murfreesboro Police Department to speak with police officers, reference a creature her son and two friends had just seen. Officers Nash and Schultz were dispatched to the area. Upon arrival, officers were met by complainant Kells, her son Ricky Kells, David Taylor, and Russell Ward. Also, the parents of Taylor and Ward were present. Officers were advised by the parents that their children had seen a large creature behind number 25 Westwood Lane, standing next to the woods. The parents stated that they were hesitant in calling, but their children's actions convinced them that they had actually seen something. Officers were led to the area where the sighting had taken place, and officers searched the wooded area just south of where the sighting was made. Officers were unable to find any tracks, but did locate an area approximately 100 yards into the woods where several large rocks had recently been turned over. Officers then interviewed each of the subjects which had seen the creature. Number 1, Ricky Kells, age 10, number 34 Westwood Lane, son of Ray Kells. Ricky stated that he, David Taylor, and Russell Ward were playing wiffle ball when they went to look for a foul ball that was hit between two houses. As he was walking down the hill, he observed a large creature, approximately 7 to 8 feet tall, standing next to the woods. Ricky hollered at David and Russell, and they also observed it. We then ran home to tell our parents. Ricky described it as being approximately 7 to 8 feet tall, had what appeared as large ears, and appeared to be gray in color. The creature was described to be covered with hair and did not move while being observed. Ricky said that as they were running away, it apparently entered the woods and he could hear a loud thumping as it walked. Number 2, David Taylor stated as he, Ricky, Russell were looking for a wiffle ball, Ricky screamed and pointed toward the woods. When he looked, he observed a large creature standing next to the woods. When he looked, he observed I wrote that line in there twice. When he looked, he observed a large creature standing next to the woods. David said they ran home to tell their parents. David described it as being approximately 7 feet tall, gray in color, and also said it appeared to have large ears or lumps on its head. He said that it made a loud thumping noise on the ground as it left. David said while he was observing it that it didn't move. He heard the noise as he was leaving the area. Number 3, Russell Ward, age 13, number 4 Buena Vista Drive, son of Robert Ward. Robert Ward stated that while he, Ricky, and David were looking for a wiffle ball, Rick screamed. And then he and David saw a large creature standing next to the woods. He said that he observed it turn sideways and raise its left arm just before it ran. He also heard a thumping sound as it walked away. Russell described it as being tall. End quote. So I want to get your thoughts on these individual sightings here.
Well, it appears that they all saw the same thing. And they all heard a thumping sound as it walked away. They all saw something that was like 7 feet tall or more. So fairly consistent. I think they saw a Squatch.
This is where you can kind of see that, okay, the hair is prominent now. Well, it's not reported as being like that. White. Gray is still, if you take white hair and mud it up a little bit, it can turn to like a gray to a degree. So this could be the same creature. Yes, spanning across 3 years. There's no mention of slime in this instance, though.
Did the officers investigate the woods this time and follow it, though?
With this case, it appears not. Now, police departments, like the police department here from Murfreesboro, like they have a plethora of cases, but this is one of the cases near the tail end because it seems like between the years 1973 and 1976, this thing or things were just popping off in and around the area of Murfreesboro. Now, those are just 2 of the reports that I had found because the police department has a plethora of reports, people writing letters in and everything. And again, oddly enough, it's heavily more reported in the summer months, particularly in June, as you can see here.
Particularly in June, I find that it's more common to get a report of an ad break. Welcome back, everybody.
I shouldn't laugh. Oh, it cracks me up. I could tell when you're going to do it. I could see your face like, oh, he's going for it. But there's other times where you just totally catch me by surprise. Anyways.
At least the listeners can't see my face.
They can't, no. So getting back into this. Now, summer months, particularly June, between the years 1973 and 1976. On the note of the area in question, let's look into Murfreesboro, Illinois a little bit. So the location, Murfreesboro is a city and the county seat of Jackson County, Illinois. Population was 7,093 at the 2020 census. Now, in terms of wildlife, it's got the usual suspects: raccoons, mink, fox, deer, bobcats, birds, amphibians, and reptiles. A good, strong ecosystem. Certainly no limit on food resources. And in fact, if we wanted to go backtracking a little bit here, it was the hunting of all these animals that brought some of the earliest inhabitants to the area. Inhabitants meaning human beings. The earliest known inhabitants were thought to have arrived at about 12,000 BC. Jumping far ahead, though, into the future, into 1673, French explorers from Quebec became the first Europeans to reach Illinois. The French named the area Illinois after the Indians who had greeted them. The French explored the Mississippi River. Sounds like a serial killer.
The Mississippi Ripper. That's another name for the mud monster when he gets a hold of something.
Yeah.
Mississippi Ripper, and then he takes you, and he's the Mississippi Dipper as he dips you in the slime.
They established outposts and they created trade routes too. European American settlers, they were, however, slow to arrive in Illinois after the United States victory in the Revolutionary War. However, by 1800s, the population was just shy of 2,000. Coal mining eventually became a prominent industry in the state at around the 20th century. The region itself has two massive river valleys that are going through it. And it's also worth noting that, of course, we have a national park nearby, the Shawnee National Forest, just south of Harrisburg, with a diverse ecosystem and over 500 wildlife species. It's a fabulous place to hide.
Absolutely. There's a national park nearby. That's a huge habitat, and we've talked about those in length before too.
Oh, absolutely. There's the more sightings I look into, particularly around the Harrison area, when you go north of Harrison, it's funny how so many outlying sightings occur around the national park. I can't remember the name of the national park north of Harrison. It's driving me nuts right now that I can't, but
that's okay. I was going to say, with national parks and sightings and all that, I believe you recently sent me a picture, was it you, of a Bigfoot sighting map?
Ooh, I don't know if I sent it recently, but I think I sent something like that to you.
It could have been Megan, but it was just the old clustered hotspot map. And I noticed looking at it now versus looking at it several years ago where it was like an older picture, it's so thick. Mm-hmm. There's so many sightings. There's so many Bigfoots. It's insane to look at these things and be like, wow, you look at it on a map. You look at Illinois or wherever in the U.S., there's barely any gaps without Bigfoot reports.
Yeah. And the frequency just keeps picking up, accelerating, if you want to call it that. You have to wonder where this is heading. Is it just because we're expanding our territory? You know, back in the 1800s, obviously the population was still around 2,000 people, but with industry and expansion, it starts to grow and grow. So you start to see things.
There's also the concept of Bigfoot being more popular and people being more willing to share reports about it instead of just hold it within and be like, I don't really want to share this. People are going to think I'm crazy.
Yeah. Different times too. You're absolutely right. Back then, people would be ridiculed for these sorts of things if you're talking about it. Aliens, Bigfoot, cryptids, like, oh, you saw a monster. Oh, he's kooky or she's nuts. Absolutely insane. Nowadays, when you say it, you usually get 10 minutes of fame on your local news network.
True enough.
So, Shawnee National Forest, coincidentally enough, has a dedicated Sasquatch statue due to the fact that this national forest has a rich history of Bigfoot sightings in the area. So now we have this affirmation that the region for quite some time has been a focal point for these creatures. Now, kind of steer us off into the sunset for this episode, I have a newspaper article that I wanted to share. And again, this article, along with the images I will be showing as well, and the two reports I mentioned prior are all available to see on the Murfreesboro, Illinois website. They have case files there with additional information you can check out. It's really, really interesting just to kind of explore. So the newspaper article I wanted to share, it has many references to the first report that we started the episode with. The newspaper title is "The Monster Being Taken Seriously." Sorry, there's a bracket in there. Is the monster being taken seriously? The title, quote unquote, monster being taken seriously. That is the title. And I quote, "The Argus Bureau, New York, Friday. A creature resembling a gorilla, 2.5 meters tall, with long, shaggy, matted hair, and smelling of river slime, is terrorizing the 10,000 citizens of Murfreesboro in Illinois." So forceful and detailed have been the accounts of those who've seen the Murfreesboro monster that the police are taking it seriously. Yet the strange, dirty white creature continues to baffle and frighten police and residents of the southern Illinois town on the sluggish, big, muddy river. "A lot of things in life are unexplainable," said Toby Berger, the police chief, and this is one of them. "We don't know what the creature is, but we do believe what they saw was real. We have tracked it, and the dogs got a definite scent." It all began shortly after midnight on June 25th. Randy Needham and Judy Johnson were conferring in a parked car on the town's boat ramp down by the Big Muddy. At one point, the couple heard a loud cry from the woods next to the car. Many were to describe the sound as that of a greatly amplified eel shriek. Needham looked up from the front seat.
Sorry, did you say greatly amplified eel shriek?
Sorry, eagle shriek. I realized my G didn't have enough emphasis on that.
I was just thinking, like, wait, what's an eel sound like? I'm thinking of silence, just water bubbling by, an eel poking out of a hole. It looks up, opens its mouth, and just bubbles come out.
Oh, that's funny. Oh my goodness.
A greatly amplified eel shriek.
Yeah, no eels, definitely eagle with the G in there. Oh, that's funny. Holy smokes. So Needham looked up from the front seat. There, lumbering toward the open window, was a light-colored hairy creature matted with mud. Judy Johnson was married at the time, according to police, but not to Needham. So when the two reported the monster, authorities took it seriously. Later, as Officer Jimmy Nash and Deputy Sheriff Bob Scott inspected some peculiar footprints in the oozing mud left by the receding river, Nash became a believer in the monster. "I was leaning over when there was the most incredible shriek I've ever heard," he said. "It was in those bushes. That was no bobcat or screech owl, and we hightailed it out of there." Then came young Christian Barrel's encounter with the big ghost, and the experience of Cheryl Ray and Randy Creeth, who drew a picture of the creature. I'm going to end the quote right there and pick it up after. At this point, I just wanted to pull up the picture. And again, these pictures, I'm going to put this on our blog with all this information too, so you can tune in to our website, CryptidClues.ca, and you can tune into the blog there. So the first one I just want to show you here, Reuben, is this. This is one of the drawings. This is from Cheryl Ray of this creature.
Yeah, it's pretty spooky. For listeners that don't look it up, it's a pencil sketch of a man-like body covered in hair, and it's got a very round circular face with a little bonnet of tousled hair and some stuff, maybe some leaves thrown in there. Not a whole lot of detail, but it kind of gets the image across that this is not a human, some kind of freakish monster or a children's drawing.
Absolutely. Here is the second one, and this is from Randy Creeth. So
this one's silhouetted.
Yes.
It's just the outline. And what really gets me is in this picture, it clearly shows the peak on the head, cone-shaped head.
Yes, you're absolutely right. I like that they kind of show the shadow of the bush and such, but even the detail too of the hair.
The shadow of the bush. It reminds me of that gif of Homer Simpson sinking into the bush.
Yeah, there you go. I love it. What do you think the scratches are on the chest? Do you think there's anything to that, or you think it's just to symbolize the hair?
I don't know. That it wasn't brought up in any of those reports, was it?
No, negative.
It'd be interesting to ask these people to talk to the witnesses ourselves. Be like, yeah, what does this represent?
Oh, I would be so fantastic if we could somehow pull that off. It would be really, really fantastic, actually. But yeah, so those are the two images that I have there. And again, they're going to be on the blog, so you can tune into that. Getting back into the article here right after this ad break. And we're back.
Oh, you got me with one.
I got you with that one. Oh, hallelujah. So that did it for Chief Berger. he ordered his entire 14-man force out for a night-long search. And Jerry Nellis, a dog trainer, this is the individual we mentioned from the first report, brought his German Shepherd named Rab. With floodlights, officers discovered a rough trail in the brush. Rab found gobs of black slime, much like that of sewage sludge, on a direct line between the river and the Ray house. Quickly, Rab was off down the hill, around the pond, and into the woods toward the Buller farm. There, Nellis and Officer Nash, his .357 Magnum drawn, approached an abandoned barn.
Oh, the abandoned barn again.
Mm-hmm. Then at the door, the dog yelped and backed off in panic. Nellis threw it in the door. The dog crawled out whining. The men radioed for help. 14 area police cars maneuvered the 2-kilometer rutted overgrown road, but the barn was empty. These are good, honest people, said Chief Berger. They are seeing something. And who would walk through sewage tanks for a joke? End quote. So, what do you think, Reuben? Now, we have more claims of this black sludge. Detailed enough reports of this thing have been showcasing what appears to be ears, or at least these bumps on the side of its head, a possible nearby home base for these things being the Shawnee National Forest, and I'm sure another plethora of mysterious creatures residing there. But then, like you mentioned in the drawing, the cone head.
Yeah, very, very Squatch-like. And what really gets me with the whole dog thing, obviously that adds a lot of credit to this being a creature, a monster, not a hoax. How did it get out of the barn? The police, they're there. They're looking the whole night. They're looking inside this barn. The dog's yelping and whining and wanting to get out. Where could it have gone?
Well, I guess we don't know for certain if it was still in there by the time they came there. But then why else would the dog be so afraid, right? To the point where the officer the individual threw the dog into the barn and it ran out.
Exactly. I guess we don't know if there was a back door to the barn, if it had slipped out and gotten away, but imagining that the barn is closed, has one entrance, that's it. Where would it go?
Are you the practicality, I guess, aside, are you inferring that there could be a spiritual component to this to a degree?
Oh, absolutely. I was going to joke about it just sinking into the mud and just like becoming one with it.
Oh my God, that's funny.
Just to muddy the waters a bit here.
Yeah.
But I could go down the rabbit hole and go into the different theories on Bigfoot and interdimensional stuff. That's always a possibility, but keeping it real, if it did slip out of the barn, either through digging its way out or through a back door or whatever, something was in there at the time to make those dogs freak out, I think.
Yeah.
The fact that the dogs didn't want to be anywhere near it, if it was interdimensional, spiritual, whatever, that also adds credence to the dogs freaking out, as they tend to do. Animals are very sensitive to that type of stuff. The slime is gross, sewage, swamp, who knows? But that's a weird thing to set up for a hoax as well. It looks like the police are taking it seriously. There were a lot of witnesses involved. There was something there.
A lot of corroboration, just reporting, okay, so much that, okay, it's a white-haired creature. That's what other cities are reporting in their newspapers. So that's coming across from several people seeing this over the course of 3 years in these more warmer summer months. And dogs aren't particularly susceptible to running away from people. If a person is covering themselves in sewage and hiding in a barn in the 70s, I don't think that would be enough to deter a dog or keep a dog completely at bay, like run out of a barn. I think that there's been many cases that we've talked about and we've explored where hunters are out with their dogs and the dogs bolt because there is something absolutely terrifying that they are aware of and the person is not. Yeah,
100%. Even on different TV shows looking for Bigfoot and stuff, if they pull out the dogs, a lot of them get to a certain point where the dogs don't want to proceed anymore. They freak out, they yelp, they go, wow, my dog's never done this before. It's a trained, professional searching dog for the police or whatever. And the dog's just like, nope, I'm out. Bye.
Yeah.
Completely terrified. It brings me back all the way to the Falk monster, Legend of Boggy Creek. You're looking for that swamp-like, sewage-like thing running around out there, reaching into people's motorhomes. Dogs go looking for it, hunting parties, and the animals don't want to have anything to do with it. But so many people saw it. It was a thing, right?
That's a really good comparison, actually.
And again, I always bring it back down to you only need one of these things to exist for Bigfoot to be real. Only one of these stories needs to be true. You don't need a whole bunch of evidence. You just need one. One needs to be real. And then that's it. You have credit for a whole species of these things out there.
Absolutely. I guess in closing, my thoughts, I really, really like seeing how serious the police took this, how defensive the officers are of the people that are residing in Murfreesboro, because at the end of the day, and this is something I remind myself, and even today's society too, like police officers, there's civilians first. We're all people here. Like, I mean, we're all human beings, even soldiers. Like we're civilians first. And so you are brought up in society, you're raised with these, individuals, these people, and you all share experiences. And so in this case, when you are in a town where everyone's like family, you treat everyone with respect and you're kind, and you've been brought up to know your neighbor, you're going to defend and look out for them. And so to have this police chief take this very seriously, defend the people, file the reports, look into the evidence, and do the searches, send 14 men down treacherous roads to try and track this thing down. I love that. And I don't know if you would get that nowadays for a Bigfoot report of any kind, but I love the sincerity.
Well, it also depends, too, on what those police officers believed in. Imagine if you or I were police officers, if we were on the force, and you and I would take certain reports like that very seriously. It would be our opportunity to really get into our hobby of wanting to investigate and get out into the woods. It's our one chance. And you go, wow, there's something here. There's a lot of witnesses. If I was a witness, I'd want to be believed. I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to look into it for the sake of that person, because I believe they're not lying. And then for the sake of being a researcher yourself, you'd be like, I want to look into this thing. I would want to be one of those officers. If I could be a police officer in a small town, don't have to deal with a whole ton of crime, get to just do my job and then wait for fantastical UFO or Bigfoot reports or whatever, I'd totally do it. At least then I'd have a gun on my hip.
Well, exactly. Yeah, absolutely. I think that's exactly it. These small towns and the Pacific Northwest, Canada is loaded with them. You go a little bit north of where we are here, and I mean, you get to some very small towns. So,
absolutely.
Yeah, and with that is it. Do you have any last minute closing thoughts before we exit out of here?
Nah, I won't muddy the waters too much. I'm gonna say that pun one more time because I like it so much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for tuning in this episode of Cryptid Clues. I'm not sure exactly what point in time this is dropped, because we've done just a whole bunch of episodes in advance, just to kind of ease down a little bit for the month of December. It's Christmas and New Year. But if this is before New Year's, have a happy, safe New Year's. If it's after, welcome to 2023.
No, that's a terrible way to do the outro. Oh, the poor people looking into the mud monster of Illinois. They're going to be ill-annoyed with us.
There you go. Well, CryptidClues.ca is our website. Again, you can access the blog and you can tune into the photographs that we shared, and you can look into a little bit more of the information that we talked about today. You can also send us an email, cryptidclues@gmail.com. You can find us on our social media channels, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook. And you can find us on Patreon, where you get ad-free early episodes available there. And with that, everyone, take care and stay safe.
Bye-bye.